This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage continues Friday at 7 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve to be first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You cannot shoot 2 of 17 from 3 and think you're beating Steph and Jimmy Buckets, a.k.a. Playoff Jimmy, Playoff him, Himmy, whatever you want to call him. You can't shoot that bad and compete in the playoffs versus the Warriors. SGA wasn't even that good. You want to talk about non-competitive series? People want to talk about getting rid of play-in. Maybe we need to get rid of the 8 seed because this 8 seed got their ass kicked.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The divorce.
And we are back, flipping the page over to round number 3, and the Giants have a pick. They select right out of the gate. We get Darius Alexander out of Toledo. A little bit of action to start the third round. Defensive tackle out of Toledo. He stands at 6'4", 305 pounds. So the Giants get their QB, and they start to address some other needs.
Yeah, I think the big thing, though, Mike, is now that we are into the third round is Shedeur Sanders being on the board. I will just kind of say again, I do not think Shedeur falling outside of round 1 is a fall. I get it's a story.
Yeah.
It's not a stunner, is what I should say. It's
you.
not a stunner. Out of round 2, absolutely is. And I even think, and I don't know how people will feel about this, I actually now feel even the team that drafts him, there will be a little bit of frustration and angst with, because Sanders was the biggest name entering this draft, and there is a level of embarrassment that comes with still sitting there. And the fact that Sanders has not been selected up until this point is very, very surprising.
Yeah, this is not Aaron Rodgers falling from 1 or possibly number 1 down to 24 when the Packers still selected him in the first round. Ben, this is a player that was certainly thought to possibly be the number 1 overall pick, not yet picked in round 3. We'll go to you to discuss the quarterback position.
Well, you're not wrong in that thinking. At the end of this previous college football and NFL season, Shedeur Sanders was the favorite to go first overall. But let's go even more recent memory. Earlier this week, Sanders was greater than a $2 minus money favorite to be a top 10 pick. Cap last night, minus 600 to be a first-round selection, and now not even drafted in round number 2. Still your second-best quarterback in terms of your QB list here for the 2025 NFL Draft. So I think the natural question is round 3 the round where Shedeur Sanders will be selected?
All right, Ben, let me explain to you what third round is. Third round around the National Football League is looked at upon as a low-end starter, high-end backup. Fourth round is always a backup. They hope sure it's starters. So the league's spoken. They don't think he's a quality starter. They think he's a low-end starter. That's the way it is. Jackson Dart, honestly, Sanders is talented, but when you look at the tape, he doesn't wow you in any way. And the league has spoken. We could talk about how we should have gone the second round. That's what we think. The league is telling you. They don't think he's a quality starter. That's just the way it is. Now, it's up to Shedeur, though, to prove them wrong. wherever he goes, he should go in this round here. Now, if he doesn't, that would be an absolute stunner. I got to be honest with you, because we're looking at Jalen Milroe, who's a total developmental quarterback.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers, we've talked about his injury history, which is significant. Should go in the 3rd or 4th round. Howard is a backup. McCord, Scott put up a lot of college numbers, but he's a backup. So, man, if you want a quarterback, Shedeur Sanders is your guy.
And when you look at where that could possibly be right now, Cap, as we have seen a couple of teams favor to draft Shedeur Sanders. Last night it was -150 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers did not have a second-round pick. Yep. They draft again at 83rd overall. Entering night number 2, it was the Las Vegas Raiders at a -220 price right before our show started to draft Shedeur Sanders. To you, are those still the 2 most likely landing spots for Shedeur?
I'll be honest with you. When I told Pharrell, Scott asked me about the Steelers, I said, man, I don't feel a lot of love for Shedeur with the Steelers, other than Mike Tomlin being public about it. I know he'll have some say it's not his call. He doesn't have personnel control. Omar Khan does, their general manager. But, man, I got to be honest with you. I know the Steelers has done a good job so far. They had a good offseason. They have a good football team. But I'm kind of curious, what is their plan if Aaron Rodgers retires? Other than trading for Kirk Cousins, which is, you talk about $35 million fully guaranteed cash for the next 2 seasons, I fail to see a plan here. Shedeur Sanders is a plan. Quite frankly, let's call it like it is. He's the last starting quarterback available here of the group.
It's a really good point, Cap. We saw 6 quarterbacks taken in round 1 a season ago. So far through 2 rounds. Cam Ward, 1st overall. Jackson Dart, 25th overall by the New York Giants. And Tyler Shuck, that 40th overall pick, and the only signal caller taken in the 2nd round. Guys, not just Shedeur Sanders, but also Jalen Milroe, who attended the NFL draft and is there right now in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Mike, I want to throw something to you that I was fascinated with. It was in just recent kind of NFL history where we had the Kenny Pickett draft. And then the picks that followed were obviously then not drafted with the most valuable draft choices. Desmond Ridder, round 3. Sam Howell, round 5.
Malik Willis.
I was stunned, though. Right, Malik Willis, yeah, another one. I was stunned at how those organizations, to some degree, felt obligated to give those guys a chance. You don't have to quarterback around 5. You don't view him as your future franchise quarterback. At least that was my idea. Obviously, none of that group panned out. What I think is interesting now is not just the slide for Shedeur Sanders, but do we now get to a point where the team that drafts him won't even feel obligated to give him a shot to be the franchise quarterback?
That's interesting. I mean, Sam Howell had a very unique season with the Commanders. It was in some ways like that Deshaun Kaiser season that he had with the Browns, where the guy started 16 games and then he was barely ever heard from again. Yeah. So, yes, there is some level of obligation, I think, but in those unique scenarios, players are starting, for lack of wanting to do anything else and knowing that the team is still going to be bad after that season. You and I actually do this on your show quite a bit, where we go through some of the future plans of teams. And what is the quarterback situation going to look like in 2026 for some of these teams? And you have to take a look at some of these guys, some of these teams down the road. Now, the Titans have addressed their long-term need. The Vikings have J.J. McCarthy, but we have to see how he actually comes into play after coming back from the injury with the multiple surgeries. The Steelers still have nobody long-term. The Saints still have nobody long-term. The Rams don't have anybody technically long-term, although Matthew Stafford for 2 or 3 seasons could be as good as anybody in the league. The Raiders still have nobody long-term. The Jets don't really have a long-term solution, right? I'm just trying to find other opportunities for Shedeur to go. And I think those guys are fair to say, you know, he's really the only guy that you could conceivably see as a starter. Now, we have seen guys shock like Dak Prescott as a 4th-round pick. Everybody knows about Tom Brady going in the 6th round. Russell Wilson was a 3rd-rounder. Jalen, most of these guys that play in the NFL, last thing, 23 guys generally a year that start in the NFL week 1 are 1st-round picks. Yeah. Not a lot of opportunity for those other guys.
And that's why I almost want to now broaden our horizons, right? I'd love for him to go to Pittsburgh.
Colts?
So let's go even further out. Teams need to have backup quarterbacks, right? My thing is, if we are now in this range and you are the Cincinnati Bengals, again, Burrow's your quarterback, right? But hey, I'd like to be able to have a quality backup if possible. And I'm not saying that Cincinnati will make that decision, but I guess to me now, I wonder if the Sanders landing spot isn't even one where when it's week 6, we're not even talking Shedeur Sanders because the quarterback in front of him is beyond entrenched in their status within the organization.
Frankly, that's what Mason Rudolph was to the Steelers.
Yeah.
They drafted Mason Rudolph fairly early with a sense of like, Ben is still the quarterback, but maybe in a few years Mason Rudolph can become something. And he did become something, which was a low-level starter to very solid backup, a citizen that they wanted on their team, so much so that the Steelers brought him back after leaving. But I'm just looking for any kind of landing spot. And the Colts are a name that I throw out, but their quarterback situation is far from settled.
And I'll just throw, because again, I think at this point it's like all bets are off. Pick 76, the Dallas Cowboys.
I don't think it's crazy at all.
I don't think it would.
Cooper Rush left this offseason.
Correct. Like, if Shedeur Sanders is the backup to Dak Prescott, I think if I were a Dallas Cowboy fan, be happier about that as opposed to Cooper Rush. And now look, Dallas is insane. So yes, Jerry Jones after a week 4 loss might say, maybe we got to give Tua a look. But that wouldn't be the realistic conversation, and just is a completely different outcome than what we thought entering this draft.
Yeah, they have Joe Milton there in Dallas now, but again, just trying to find those spots. Clearly, we'll throw it back to the wall after this break to get some thoughts on the QB position and other potential landing spots for not just Shedeur, but some of the other high-profile players in this draft. SportsGrid draft coverage rolls on right after this.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage continues Friday at 7 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
If you're gonna trade Durant, right? It means things are getting weird anyway. Teams are going to, before they go for Durant, they're going to go for Devin Booker. That's just the reality of it.
You get rid of Durant, or do you do the crazy one? Because you're so far out of the West, you get rid of Booker, because D-Book will bring you far more in a return.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage continues Friday at 7 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone...
And we are back live on draft coverage. I'll give you the last couple of picks. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, the tight end, goes to the Browns. Darian Porter from Iowa State, a corner, goes to the Raiders. And Kyle Williams out of Washington, so no Shedeur to the Raiders, by the way. Kyle Williams out of Washington State, the wide receiver, goes to the Patriots. Ben, back to you for your takes on those picks.
As we talk about Harold Fannin Jr., who set so many single-season records last year for Bowling Green, it's hard to even keep up. Cap, he had 1,555 receiving yards a year ago, 17 receiving touchdowns. Those led the nation, but he's the first ever FBS tight end ever to lead the country in receiving yards, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. Also, that 1,555 receiving yards, the most by an FBS tight end ever in a single season in the history of college football. So a record setter and a history maker, and Cleveland drafts him early in round number 3. What stands out most about Harold Fannin Jr.?
Well, the production was ridiculous, one of the best in college football history. But let me tell you the truth here. What happened? Scott Loeffler's offense, and he's now the Eagles quarterback's coach. Everything funneled to Fannin Jr. Literally everything. He's not a great athlete. He's undersized. He can't play tight end. I'm told he's going to play the offset position. It's called the F position to tight end. He can't play in line. This is a little bit early. I know teams that had 5th-round grades on him, but look, they want to go 12 personnel. That's Kevin Stefanski's thing in Cleveland. I'm a little bit surprised. I'm going to be honest with you that he went this early, but can't knock the production.
Yeah.
But folks have to understand he's not a great athlete. David Njoku is phenomenal, but he gets hurt a lot. You could put him on the move. He could play in line. We're talking about Njoku. But Fannin Jr.'s got to prove it to me at this next level. I know the numbers are phenomenal. Obviously going to stay in state at Bowling Green. But this, to me, is a little bit early.
So let me ask you a follow-up question as well, because at some point tonight, Jalen Milroe was favored to go to the Cleveland Browns. Not a hefty minus money price like we can see in those NFL draft betting odds, but plus 195. There was a consideration, maybe not early in round 2 with the 2 early selections the Browns had, but maybe here in early round number 3. Milroe is in Green Bay, attending the 2025 NFL Draft. Cap, is there a potential for Jalen Milroe to be selected by the time the night is over?
All right, so Ben, he's the kind of guy that needs to go somewhere where he doesn't need to play for probably the first 2 years. Let him develop. Just, you can't put him on a practice squad. You draft him, he's on your team. But he needs to be brought along slowly where they've got the veteran who's established, have a good veteran, and let him be the 3 for 2 years. Then see what he can do. You got to bring him along slowly. And also, as I told you earlier, Wildcat quarterback. Maybe you have him active as the 3rd quarterback and use him a different way, but he's not ready to play football.
Yeah, the quarterback conversation will continue to be a thing to end out night number 2. Shedeur Sanders waiting for a new home. Same with Jalen Milroe. Harold Fannin Jr., though, going 67th overall to the Cleveland Browns. The record setter has a new home in the National Football League, Blue.
Yeah, so the Browns, Kev, let's just go over their picks quick. They're a team that's really in the mix right at the top of this draft, and they made a huge move moving out of that number 2 pick, where I think some people are going to, frankly, judge this draft forever as to whether or not Travis Hunter became a Hall of Fame type player, and the Browns had him and moved out. But what they did do, before you go, they drafted Mason Graham, a defensive tackle. They drafted Carson Swessinger, a linebacker out of UCLA. Quinshon Judkins, the running back, and now Fannin, the tight end. A couple of defensive players, a couple of offensive players, trying to build around a team that is still wayward on quarterback, but they're going to have Joe Flacco at the helm for this upcoming season.
I'm glad you did this. If it's interesting, because the thing I was just going to say is the Browns are K-Dubs and Blewett sit down for an hour plus and just talk only Cleveland Browns. Yeah. I think they're fascinating. I think their decision to trade back for 2 can only really be viewed through the prism of we are accruing assets for next year. Teams rarely do this. In the NFL, teams very rarely say, we want to be in the quarterback hunt 2026 draft. What's odd, though, about it, Mike, is the Browns are not positioned to be that bad. Here's one of my things that with sometimes people will throw out the idea of it's hard to tank in the NFL. No, it's not. You just actually have to do it. The New England Patriots had no interest in being good this season, and they entered Week 18 with the 1st overall pick. They won a game they shouldn't have if they fell back to 4, but they were as bad as everybody thought they were going to be. The Arizona Cardinals 2 years prior to that, people that were like, if Kyler doesn't come back, they might not win a game. What did they win? A game before Kyler came back? I mean, they were legitimately atrocious. So if the Cleveland Browns want to be all in on the 2026 quarterback class, I'm cool with that. You want to trade back and bring back assets? I'm cool with that. But you made a mistake then, a couple of months ago. And it's weird to say you made a mistake re-signing a future Hall of Famer instead of trading him, but that's what they did in Myles Garrett. Because now you would expect it to be at least a top 10 defense. Stefanski's a good offensive coach. We all believe that. So if the Browns win 7, 8, 9 games, they may have to give up their first, the Jags' first, and maybe 2 more firsts to get this quarterback they covet. And there is still some risk that next year's class doesn't have enough guys, because if you are trading up, there has to be a willingness. They could have offered the world at Tennessee. We found out they weren't moving out of it. So I am really interested in Cleveland. I do not like half in, half out. You want to drop the bottom? Awesome. Don't pick Mason Graham at 5. Keep trading back and let the Bears come up to 10 and take Gentry like they wanted to.
Yeah, they didn't do much in free agency. They did sign Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He came from the Bucs. They signed Tevin Jenkins from the Bears, former high draft pick, to try to shore up the offensive line. Kenny Pickett will probably be back up to Joe Flacco, assuming Joe Flacco is able to last at least a fair amount of the season, although we've seen him in and out of the lineup even when he's had those starting opportunities. I'm with you. What I find fascinating above all of it is that Jimmy Haslam had a reputation for firing people left and right. Let's get the GM out of here. Let's get a new head coach in. Let's keep turning over to a new regime. But he is entrusting Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Paul DePodesta and everybody else that works in that front office to shepherd them through this really strange time where they have a bunch of talent and nothing offensively to guide them.
It is, though, remarkable just that they completely passed on QB this whole draft.
250 carries for Quinshon Judkins. Book it. We'll be back after this.
See you at the OPO.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back. Several picks flying off the board here. Just got 5 minutes in between picks, and they are coming off the board fast and furious, Ben. The Lions were the last team that we did not update. They get a wide receiver out of Arkansas.
Wide receiver, tight end hybrid during his time for the Hogs. Isaac Tesla makes his way now to Detroit. We'll see how John Morton uses him in that new Lions offense. Our most recent selection, the cornerback out of Florida State, goes 73rd overall to the New York Jets. That's Azareye'h Thomas, who makes his way now to New York. He was a physical corner for Florida State throughout his collegiate career. Azareye'h Thomas now headed to Florham Park to be a part of Gang Green. The Denver Broncos have that next selection up at 74th overall. As we focus on the New York Jets, of course, a new regime now under Aaron Glenn with new GM Darren Muji. Of course, their first pick last night in the opening round, Armand Membu, in the offseason acquisition of Justin Fields at the quarterback spot. Guys, a lot of optimism, of course, in the 2-year Aaron Rodgers tenure for this New York Jets side that they never were able to actualize. It is a new organization, a new franchise trying to snap the longest postseason drought in the National Football League. 14 consecutive years the Jets have missed out on the playoffs, and in half of those 14 campaigns, 5 wins or fewer, like we saw for the Jets just a season ago. I'm not sure they snap that playoff skid this year, Blue, but can they start to turn the momentum for Gang Green moving forward? That will be the task for Aaron Glenn in his first year as head coach.
You know, you have to take all this with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But there were some comments recently by Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Potential Steelers quarterback, potential retiree, Aaron Rodgers.
Tough to tell.
About the way that the Jets dealt with him when he flew cross country in order to have a sit-down meeting about his future with the Jets. And from his perspective, his words only, it was painfully awkward the way he was dealt with. What worries me generally about the NFL, certain teams in the NFL, is not that, they reached for Zach Wilson or this other team reached for another guy. It's that, I think whoever you brought in was probably going to suck because you're not run the organization properly. And I have concerns about the new regime and whether or not they can get it done in New York. I have a lot of respect for Aaron Glenn. He was a great player. He played in New York. I hope he can handle it. But that concerns me if that's the way he dealt with a player that technically was not off the team yet.
Yeah, I think that it might speak, well, if it is true.
Definite caveat, if it's true.
Still, I think, speaks to Rodgers as much as it does the Jets.
Okay, fair.
And I think that he should wear more of it than he probably is willing to, but I do totally understand your point. However, for the Jets, I just wonder if this organization is, and I know the drought, I know what I'm about to say is going to maybe be almost rude or not caring, but you need to have some patience. Aaron Glenn just got there.
Yeah.
And, there are some Jets fans who are like, man, Fields is going to go out there, run all over the field. Why can't we? Stop with the why can't we 9-10 sneak into the wild card, man? Like, why? Like, I know I have an NBA brain sometimes, but Washington Wizards fans knew exactly what this season was going to be. And there are not Wizards fans calling for head coaches or general managers' jobs because they won 17, 18 basketball games. They knew what it was going to be. If you're the Jets and Aaron Glenn wins 5 games this year, that's okay. Look for improvement in areas. Hope that the players you care about as long-term cornerstones, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, now Armand Membu, Olu Fashanu, Quinnen Williams, hope that those guys continue to impress and progress within this new regime's lead. I wonder if that patience, though, will be there, or if Justin Fields, and also if Justin Fields does win you 7-8 games, it doesn't mean he has to be your franchise quarterback and you flip him $150 million.
I totally agree with that. I think what's a struggle for a lot of Jets fans, obviously, is the drought, but also that they were talked into, and many were believers of the fact that, you know what, this is a really talented team, and all we needed was the QB. And then the QB tore his Achilles 4 plays in, and then the QB wasn't really very good, and the surrounding cast was perhaps not as good as they were sold originally. I think you're totally right to have patience with Glenn and the rest of the organization. They won 5 games last year. You're just looking for improvement, not a Super Bowl ring. We'll be back after this.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Celtics in 6.
And we are back. Couple more picks off the board. Pat Bryant, Illinois wide receiver, goes to the Denver Broncos. Nick Martin out of Oklahoma State, a linebacker, goes to the San Francisco 49ers. Kev, let's focus on the Niners for a minute. I feel like we haven't talked about them too much the last couple of nights. They are a team that is certainly in flux. I would say
fair.
Not in that they have a sweeping change necessarily. Leadership mostly still intact, but they lost a lot of players. The guys that were formerly keys to their defensive prowess. You have somebody like Talanoa Hufanga, he leaves and goes to the Broncos. Dre Greenlaw also to the Broncos. Now, both of those guys oft injured, serious injuries, but they were the heart and soul of the Niners defense at one point, and they've moved on. Those are just 2 of many players that defected San Francisco, and they've had to replace a lot of free agent losses.
Yeah, I think what jumps out, though, in the Nick Martin selection, true, like your diehard college football fans will know, that was a preseason All-American, people thought at the linebacker across college football. Now, Oklahoma State had one of the most bizarre down seasons I can remember. I know I don't go far back as everyone else, but Ollie Gordon went from like sneaky Heisman contender to to close out 2 seasons ago, to all of a sudden then Ollie Gordon was just bad at football. Like they couldn't run the football. It was something that myself and Lisi kind of went back and forth. We would trade off who was going to revive Ollie Gordon's career. The answer was neither one of us. Quite frankly, I know I'm talking, but Nick Martin, to me, they saw maybe a lot of the last year, 2 years ago's tape and thought, okay, this is really interesting. They are defense through 3 picks here. It is remarkable, though, that a team that spent 2 straight years booked as the NFC's favorites until it was, mid-season clear, they just didn't have it. Now they're thinking, okay, we're healthy, we should be fine. That NFC West that looked so vulnerable that could be picked on. Again, the new hot date, that's the LA Rams for everybody. So that battle at the top is going to be really interesting.
So Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, Nick Martin off the board to the Niners. Back over to the wall with Adam and Ben. What do you guys think of what the Niners have done here?
Yeah, 6-11 last year, Blue, in 2024. But prior to that, 4 NFC Championship game appearances in a 5-year window. 2 Super Bowl berths, of course, both coming up short against the Kansas City Chiefs. Cap, what's the mentality for San Francisco this offseason trying to figure things out in 2025?
John Lynch is interesting. I remember being in his office, Ben, many years ago, and it was an off-season where they knew they had a lot of needs. He said, listen, can't solve every need in one offseason. In fact, they have a placard Kyle Shanahan used. They always look at it when they go, oh, we got a lot to do. You can't go crazy in free agency. It generally doesn't work. But when you look at their situation, obviously Brock Purdy being healthy, that's a big deal. They know that. They have to retool their offensive line a little bit. They got to help Nick Bosa out at edge. They got to help him on the other side. Mm-hmm. That's a need. Defensive tackle, they were awful coming into the offseason. Very light. Remember, they cut Javon Hargrave, who signed elsewhere. So they had a lot of work to do. But they like the receiver group. They're going to get Ayuk back from his ACL injury. They're going to take care of George Kittle. They know they got to take care of that, who's been unbelievable. They got Juszczyk back, their fullback. They redid his deal. They still have a skeleton of a team that could be good. But the Rams, man, the Rams are right there. Rams have to still address their corner group. But the Niners right there, as you see, they need a lot of help. Their shell of the team is good, but they need to fill out a lot of the roster.
Earlier this offseason, the 49ers opened up with the 3rd best price to win the NFC Championship, only behind the reigning Super Bowl champs and the Eagles and behind the Lions. That number has moved, though, now tied for the 5th best price alongside the Green Bay Packers. The odds always optimistic around the 49ers. Cap, one follow-up for you about San Francisco's philosophy this offseason. Outside of getting ready for the draft this week, the big news around the NFL, Brock Purdy showing up for voluntary OTAs. George Kittle was not there, both hoping for a contract extension this offseason. Let's talk about the quarterback in Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant, now 3 drafts ago, enters his 4th and final year under his rookie deal. The going rate, it seems now for quarterbacks, Cap, around $50 million per year. 9 QBs make more than $50 million per year on annual average value. Is Brock Purdy going to see that number?
Listen, they know it's a priority. They're going to get this done by training camp. What's interesting is Kyle Strong and his agent used to be a scout for the Niners many years ago. It's really odd, crazy situation. But you look at this kid's situation with Brock Purdy and everything that he's had to go through here, just keeping him upright. And that plays to the $50 million a year plus. By the way, Jalen Hurts got just over $50 million a couple years ago. And now you're looking at Brock Purdy, who's not gotten anywhere close to winning a Super Bowl. So I know fans, I know some people are out there like, hey, they can't pay him this money. But John Lynch made it clear. He's absolutely their guy. Fits their West Coast scheme, short area passer, right after the catch, he fits it. Got to stay healthy. This deal's going to get done. They know that. Now, the question is, though, Ben, on your point, can they find a middle ground? Can they find a short-term deal? It's hard to do because in today's NFL, you commit to these. It's what people said about Jordan Love extending his contract. How could they do this? Mm-hmm. When you know he's your guy, you extend it out.
And when you're Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of the 7th round of the 2022 NFL Draft, that rookie wage, a lot of a cheaper discount than what Brock Purdy is going to see in whatever this contract extension looks like. Blue, Kev, back to you.
Out of East Carolina, obviously we've talked about him throughout the night. Cowboys willing to take the perhaps risk on the player coming back from a serious injury?
Yeah, I think if you're Dallas, you hope that he can come back, and you potentially got yourself a great steal. I think Cowboys fans will be elated with their draft. I actually think it is... I'm not going to run to give Jerry Jones credit, but if Jerry Jones is responsible for everything, the guy's a heck of a drafter. I mean, they routinely do seem to get it right here. It's at least at the top end of the draft, Mike. They do a lot of things. Micah Parsons still not being every day. Micah Parsons isn't paid is ridiculous. But
CeeDee Lamb before that. And
again, yes, like I don't know how
Jack
they don't learn their lesson, but they're
just
just
wait after he breaks his leg to sign him.
Yeah, I guess so. It's crazy, but they do always seem to get the draft right, and it's like their safety net. And you look at today, and what will happen is Donovan Ezaraku is going to be at least a 5-sack guy for them because that's how this goes. And Tyler Booker is going to be on that offensive line for a decade and be fantastic. And now, if Revel can bounce back, it wouldn't stun me if he's really, really good.
And yet, they're the only team in the NFC that hasn't made a conference championship game this century.
Wild.
So we will see if those picks do work out in the way that Kev says. Obviously, we're going to be tracking the rest of this round 3. The picks are all going off the board quicker than they were previously. Jordan Birch from Oregon, the edge rusher, goes to the Cardinals. We've got Texans, Colts, Bengals, Titans, Steelers.
So
we know what we're looking at. Everybody's looking at it. I happen to be a Steelers fan, but now everybody's looking what's going to happen when the Steelers pick.
I think it is fair to say that if Shedeur Sanders does not go to the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 83, then there needs to be more information. Like, all Caps might end up getting a text message like, by the way, his ankle doesn't work anymore. Like that, if the Steelers pass on him twice, that would be stunning beyond belief for me.
And do they like another quarterback more? Clearly,
if they want a different quarterback, to be fair, that's different. But
still, it would be shocking. Like, how bad were these interviews that Shedeur did? How bad could they possibly be? Back with more after this.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 18.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
First time on a casino floor and feeling a little overwhelmed? Well, here's a tip. Lots of machines have a free demo mode you can try for practice. So give those slots a spin in practice mode before you start putting down some real cash. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You cannot shoot 2 of 17 from 3 and think you're beating Steph and Jimmy Buckets, a.k.a. Playoff Jimmy, Playoff him, Himmy, whatever you want to call him. You can't shoot that bad and compete in the playoffs versus the Warriors. SGA wasn't even that good. You want to talk about non-competitive series? People want to talk about getting rid of play-in. Maybe we need to get rid of the 8 seed because this 8 seed got their ass kicked.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
We're back in. Joe Lisi coming back into the mix here. Joe, we got our last few picks off the board. We mentioned Jordan Birch, the edge rusher out of Oregon. Jalen Noel out of Iowa State, the wide receiver. So a couple of Iowa State wide receivers now off the board. You mentioned that earlier in the night. And Justin Wally, cornerback from Minnesota. Let's stick with the Texans. We talked earlier, Kaplan and I talked about it earlier in the night. The Texans have a very deep wide receiver room, but the Tank Dell injury puts them down a man for at least a year, a very serious injury. They've had a couple of wide receivers in this draft. How do you feel about the Texans building up that side of the ball after moving on from their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick?
Yeah, I like what they did. Again, you can never have, not enough depth. I think that's the biggest part. And you look at John Mechie as well, coming out of Alabama, high expectations, did have the situation where he did have lymphoma. He got through that, but really hasn't panned out to be the real number 2 outside of Nico Collins. Maybe potentially this year, but you add 2 big play wide receivers from Iowa State. No more of a slot type of wide receiver. Higgins was on the outside, but Noel's a guy that can just play like Tank Dell, can get over the middle, runs very clean routes, has great hands, and I like what the Texans have done. I think there's a few teams offensively and defensively that I think have won rounds 1 and number 2. We talked about what Atlanta has done. I like what Cleveland has done now in the second round in terms of acquiring a lot of players, and now the Texans fill multiple needs on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Ben, pretty fascinating. The teammates from Iowa State, 2 Cyclones ending up in Houston. What do you think?
Blue, the only 2 teammates at the FBS level a season ago to both rank in the top 10 of receiving yards. Jalen Noel, a little bit shy of 1,200. Jaden Higgins just behind him, 1,183. And Cap, the Texans did not pick last night. Of course, they traded out of number 25 overall. They moved to the early portion of the second round. They get Jaden Higgins. Later on in round number 2, Ariante Ursary, the big offensive tackle from Minnesota. And here in round number 3, Jalen Noel, the teammate of Higgins in Ames. They're now teammates again in H-Town. Of course, a lot of offensive pieces to surround C.J. Stroud with. How have you evaluated what the Houston Texans have done?
Yeah, so I like Noel as a slot receiver. So that's where Christian Kirk is, but Kirk's on the final year of his deal. Noel is a talented kid. Now, what a receivers coach told me about him is if you're going to not play him in the slot, you got to keep moving him to free him up because physically it's just not big enough. Really good. His teammate is really tall, and they've added size. Nico Collins is an absolute stud. I like their tight end group. This is a team, if they could protect the quarterback. That was the problem last year. Offensive line, and by the way, they moved a bunch of their offensive linemen off the team this year. They got to rebuild this thing. That is the key to their growth, is rebuilding this offensive line.
2 consecutive AFC South championships for the Houston Texans. Of course, each of the 2 years, D'Amico Ryans has been the head coach in H-Town, and C.J. Stroud has been the quarterback. Plus 115 Blue for the Texans to make it 3 in a row. They are the favorites currently to win the AFC South in 2025.
And we go on to the clock right now are the Tennessee Titans. That pick is in, which puts the Steelers on the clock, Joe. Obviously, people have been waiting to see what the Steelers would do. Will they address the quarterback position? They didn't move at all. They stayed home and took Harmon last night, and now they had to wait all the way to round 3 pick number 83 in order to see what they do next. I can't see them doing anything else. Look, I'm a Steelers fan for a really long time. It would not surprise me if they avoided it and looked for the Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins maneuvering, but a quarterback is sitting here for them to take.
You want a young face of the franchise. No, they thought they had that with Kenny Pickett. It didn't work out. Kenny Pickett now with the Cleveland Browns. But at the end of the day, you're not going to go very far with Kirk Cousins. Let's be honest. He can do all he wants in the regular season. Where's the marquee playoff win? He has one against New Orleans, and that came, 6 years ago when Drew Brees was on basically the end of his career? Outside of that, Kirk Cousins hasn't led not one team to an NFC championship. And Aaron Rodgers was the hope in New York. Didn't pan out. He's a cancer in the locker room. Is that what you want when you have young players like George Pickens that's half of the time checked out? I don't think so. But again, Mike Tomlin and the organization, did this to themselves. They really did, because they did potentially have a quarterback in the wings in Justin Fields. He moves on to the New York Jets. I think it's a great fit for him. We'll see if he can live up to expectations. But what was the real, focus of this franchise? They got by with pedestrian quarterback play for a couple of years now, and now they have no place to go but to hope Aaron Rodgers comes back or potentially take a third-round pick. And if it's not Shedeur Sanders and it's Jalen Milroe, you now have another project quarterback that you have to develop.
The problem with the projects for the Steelers at this point is that defense, as talented as it is in certain spots, you have Cam Hayward's 36, T.J. Watt's 31, Minkah Fitzpatrick 29 years old, and Minkah coming off not a great season. T.J. Watt did not close the season that great. So it is going to be difficult to try to sell this team on a project, but Mike Tomlin's as entrenched as any head coach in the league.
Well, let me ask you this. Their defense, right? You mentioned the players, right? Minkah, Cam Hayward getting older, T.J. Watt banged up. This is nice pick, typical Pittsburgh pick, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what they want to do. Okay. Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, ground and pound type of back. Couldn't get it done in terms of Najee Harris. They get another physical back. Offensive line better be up to par because Caleb Johnson, again, has great vision, but elite speed like some of the others. Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, I just don't see it, Mike.
So the Steelers pass on QB again. Obviously, they don't value any of these players all that greatly, and they go with Caleb Johnson. Troy Fautanu, the rookie last year, did not participate in the season at all due to an injury. They had Broderick Jones as a first-round pick a couple of years ago. So we know how this team is going to operate. It is going to be ground and pound. They are obviously focused on Aaron Rodgers and adding a veteran quarterback. Do they do something in the trade market? I don't really see it. Cousins will be out there for a while, so the Falcons say. But Steelers going with Caleb Johnson. I really don't mind them adding a running back, but as you said, you start to wonder what the plan here is for them to get a face of the franchise. It's going to be a revolving door at QB.
Yeah, and maybe it capped again at 8-9 wins.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, that's the frustration, is that the 9 wins don't really amount to much when you can't get a playoff win, even if you're at home. When we come back, we'll get Adam and Ben's reaction to the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting a running back, not going QB in the 2025 NFL Draft.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back on the grid. 2025 NFL draft rolls along. We're about halfway through that third round, The Steelers, Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa. Ben, they've spent a lot of assets on offensive line in the first round in recent seasons. They're going to take this third round running back and see if they can ground and pound in 2025.
Fluid, a guy that I am in love with from his days at Iowa. I think you get a super productive running back in Caleb Johnson, who is not just great on the ground, but an athletic freak out of the backfield as well. Basically, Cap accounted for more than 40% of Iowa's offensive production in 2024, both yardage and scoring. So Caleb Johnson now heads to the National Football League for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think even more than that, Cap, it's the decision for the Steelers not to go at quarterback. Some of the other teams we discussed moving back in the second round, going a different direction. Pittsburgh stayed right here. They did not have a second-round pick to start off night number 2. Seemed like it could be yet another natural landing spot for Shedeur Sanders. Pittsburgh decides otherwise. Are we going to see Shedeur Sanders drafted on night number 2?
Ben, he's running out of chances. By the way, let me just address the thing with Pittsburgh. So they did not see him as a starter. Okay, let's I'll call it like I know. They just didn't feel that way. They liked the quarterback, didn't love him. And unless you think the guy's a starter, because again, I told you earlier, third round is a low-end starter round. They clearly did not believe that. So they went with Johnson. He's a power back. This fits what their mold is. They want a physical back. Replace Najee Harris. I totally get that. There's your future starter at running back. Kenny Gainwell, who they signed, will be their pass-protecting back, but he did a great job in Philly with. And, of course, Warren is a really good change-up as a number 2 back. But bottom line is, I have trouble finding a home. I thought Kevin Walsh made a good point. It may not be a team that we had on our radar. Team that sees him as a good value as a backup with upside. Yeah. It's really what we're looking at right now.
It really is. When you look at where those next spots might be, the Rams perhaps at 90th overall, the Seahawks at 92nd. The Saints got their quarterback tonight with Tyler Shuck. The Browns at 94th. And then 2 consecutive Raiders picks, Blue, 98th overall and 99th overall. Those could be the only spots available for Shedeur Sanders to go before we end out night number 2 in round number 3. Again, I do believe it bears repeating. Minus 600 for Shedeur Sanders to be a first-round selection entering the 2025 NFL Draft. He still remains out there on the big board.
Yeah, so last thing we'll say on this before we move on to some other players, Joe, is that like Adam just said, like Kevin said before it, we are reaching the range in the draft where teams are no longer going to consider some of these players starters. Round 3, clearly you're still looking at somebody to be a starter and or potential starter. After that, catch as catch can. You may or may not be a starter. We want you to be part of the team, but no guarantees.
Yeah, I think of Malik Willis. The way they pumped up Malik Willis at the Combine. He was supposed to be at one point in March, April of that draft class. He was the number 1 quarterback potentially in terms of the odds market, right? Where did he go? Third round, basically, to Tennessee. And where is he? Just a pedestrian backup. So, we've seen the odds market be wrong before. It happened tonight with Travion Henderson and Cleveland early on, right? To just the info is coming out, whether some is good and some is bad, and you have to process it accordingly, but it's also team need and the player. I can't tell you just based off this class. I agree. It's not a heavy, elite quarterback class, but I still believe Shedeur Sanders, wherever he goes, is still the second best quarterback in terms of the prospects. Whether he pans out, we'll see. I think he's better than Jackson Dart. I think he's better than Tyler Shuck.
Malik Willis in the 2022 draft went 86th overall. That's the exact pick we are on right now with the Los Angeles Chargers. Last couple of picks, Jacob Parrish, a corner from Kansas State to the Bucs, and Noel Williams out of California, a cornerback to the Kansas City Chiefs. So you got Chargers up next, Packers after that, Jags after that. Well, like we were talking, there may not be too many landing spots for starting QBs, but Joe, some best available players out there outside of Shedeur. You've got Jared Wilson, Jalen Rose, Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame, is a name that a lot of people like. He could be an impact player at the next level. Correct?
Yeah, you think about Marcus Freeman and physicality. Two best secondaries basically in FBS last year, and I'm talking about out of the elite teams was Notre Dame and Texas respectively, right? We saw Barron go, and now, you talk about Notre Dame having potential playmakers in the secondary. That adds and translates to the next level, especially when you look at Kyle Hamilton's success early on in the Baltimore Ravens career.
Some other impact players on the offensive side of the ball. Cam Scadaboo, running back out of ASU, and Gunnar Helm, the Texas tight end, might be some names that we see called here late in round 3. Back after this.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. BEJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back with more on the grid. NFL draft rolls on. Green Bay Packers will be up. Their pick is in. We'll see what that is in a couple of minutes. But, Ben, the Chargers made a pick. Jamari Caldwell out of Oregon, the defensive tackle. It feels like Jim Harbaugh, as much as any coach in the league, really likes particular players. What do you think about the Chargers' next move?
Yeah, I like what the Chargers have done here, Blue, so far in the 2025 NFL draft, the second under Jim Harbaugh. And, Cap, when you talk about what LA is doing right now and where things kind of fall within that AFC hierarchy, as we've discussed a few times, the Philadelphia Eagles take the Super Bowl from Kansas City. The three-peat no longer a thing. The Chiefs will not enter 2025 as the defending Super Bowl champs for the first time in a while, but they're still the reigning AFC champs, and they're still the reigning AFC West champions, now going on 9 consecutive seasons. Is there any chance that you see the Chiefs unseated atop that throne in the division?
Well, it's an interesting question, because if you look at the Chiefs and their passing game, right? That's the season Mahomes' numbers have gone down, way down. Where's the explosiveness? They've got Worthy, right, who could flat out fly. They had a nice rookie season, well ahead of schedule. But they got to get him on the same page with Mahomes. They got to expand the passing game. They brought back Hollywood Brown who could run. Now, part of it, Ben, was their offensive line. And they went through 4 left tackles. That can't happen. They signed Jalen Moore now, who for a couple years should be their left tackle. They signed him away from the Niners.
Yeah.
But can they unseat? Can the Chargers do it? I still have issues with the Chargers pass rush. You mentioned earlier, they said goodbye to Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
And they need to be better there. Cornerback-wise, the Chargers are not very good at all. They overachieved last season. They still have to address this. I like what they've done on offense. They solidified their offensive line. They addressed the receiver position. They're okay at running back. They know they got Najee Harris who could eat up carries, but they need some juice in the backfield. That's something they need to look at. Get some speed back there at running back, but they're not there yet. But they could push. To answer your question, move this forward. They could push the Chiefs, but they're not there yet.
The Bolts did draft Omarion Hampton last night, hoping that he will help with what they have going offensively in 2025. The Green Bay Packers, the hometown team, hosting the NFL draft, just on the clock. The pick is in. Cap, another wide receiver, Savion Williams out of TCU. That is the second wide receiver from the Lone Star State the Packers have drafted here in 2025. Last night in the opening round, of course, it was the speedster from Texas in Matthew Golden. You add in Anthony Belden, the offensive lineman for Green Bay. All three picks so far on the offensive side of the ball.
All right, so Belton, I'm told, is a tackle. If you really need him to, he can play guard, but he's a tackle. Now, left tackle's a position I know a lot of people around the league thought that they would look at, so Belton could do that. He's a very good football player. They've addressed receiver, which we knew they had to do for the Christian Watson ACL injury. Dobson on the final year of his deal.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about this draft, Ben, and we just talked about the Chargers. So they addressed running back. They had to do it. They had to get some juice. It was a great value, right? They do need a third back there. Get back to the Packers. They needed to add 2 receivers. They've done that. So they're looking pretty good right now. They've got Belton also at an offensive tackle. The Packers, see, Ben, they're a funny team. They have one of the best rosters, but they never win in the playoffs. What's the problem? That is the most confounding football team I've covered in years. I don't know why they don't win in the playoffs.
A lot of optimism for Green Bay entering last season, a disappointing performance to start off the postseason. Blue, we continue to roll on here in round number 3.
Savion Williams, TC out of TCU. You're a big Big 12 guy. You love Big 12 players. Williams, another one, headed to Green Bay.
Yeah, productive, explosive. Again, a great route runner, steps up in big games and great hands. Now, does that translate to the next level? It should. And when you look at the young wide receivers for Green Bay right now, they struggled. They struggled against Philadelphia in terms of that playoff loss. They got beat up. Wicks, Watson, the whole group got beat up and knocked off their routes, and that's why they only put up 10 points in terms of that playoff loss. Now you have playmakers around Jordan Love. You solidify the offensive line. You protect him. You run the football with Josh Jacobs, and you get back to a more balanced attack. Let's not forget when they dominated the Dallas Cowboys, it was Aaron Jones that was really the spearhead of that offense. He was averaging basically about 114 rushing yards per game heading into that playoff win, dominated again, and then that opened up the passing attack for Jordan Love in that matchup. They were too inconsistent last year in big games. They need to get back to basics, but you need to build out your wide receiver core because, again, depth in this league is huge, and they had very inexperienced wide receivers last year.
Totally agree with you on them not getting over the hump in some of those big games. I think they fell short of some people's expectations, including mine, of where they could be relative to their divisional competition. But with Golden and Savion Williams, they've long been criticized about not taking a wide receiver early. They do it last night with Golden. They have taken a lot of swings. They did have Watson there. Again, he's injured. Romeo Doubs probably not going to be on the team long term. They are trying to build up depth here and perhaps overtake some of the current talent that's on this team.
Yeah, and they had Jaden Reed, right?
Yes.
Jaden Reed, again, non-existent.
Really good. Yes.
Good and bad, though. There were games where he was checked out. Can't wait to get back to Detroit, and he goes over in terms of that matchup. Again, Jaden Reed, in terms of stature, a little bit shorter. Now you add Golden. You add now Savion Williams. You have speed on the perimeter. They took a shot a couple of years ago when Aaron Rodgers was there with Amari Rodgers from Clemson, right? Didn't pan out. So Now you have more wide receivers that potentially can help out, and we'll see what this offense looks like. But Matt LaFleur is a very underrated coach.
I agree.
And even when they had success with Aaron Rodgers and they challenged Tampa Bay for that NFC championship, they still had a dual-headed rushing attack. They want to run the football. They couldn't get and didn't get enough out of A.J. Dillon. He moved on, and now we'll see what they get out of this offense with the playmakers that they have.
He'll be Saquon Barkley's running mate in Philly, if you can call him a running mate, when Saquon Barkley is the starter in Philadelphia, will A.J. Dillon. But certainly a trend that's unbreakable really in the NFL, Joe, is having your younger quarterback be surrounded by as much talent as they can accrue. So in addition to the two wide receivers, they had Anthony Belton, so their first three picks, all offense to support Jordan Love.
Yeah, and that's the right way to go, right? You have a commodity in terms of Jordan Love. You sign them to $50+ million a year, and you start out week 1 of 2024, and you're holding your breath if he's out for the regular season, right?
Yep.
You need to protect Jordan Love. He needs to play 17 games if you're ever going to challenge for an NFC North title, knowing how complete Detroit is, knowing that Minnesota's up and coming, Caleb and Ben Johnson. Now the division is a black and blue division again, right? They need to at least get to 10, 11 wins. And again, you solidify the offensive line, you protect Jordan Love, your main asset, and we'll see how they respond this coming season.
Jaguars back-to-back picks. Caleb Ransaw, Tulane cornerback. Wyatt Millam from West Virginia. He's an offensive guard. Rams back on the clock. Then you've got the Ravens. Ben, back to you here. We got the Rams on the clock. Looks like the pick is in. We don't know what it is yet. We got Rams, Ravens, and Seahawks as the next three.
Yeah, Cap, we talked about the potential landing spots for Shedeur Sanders, if any remain here on night number 2. You said it could be somebody unexpected, maybe more of a project quarterback to learn as a reserve. Do you think there's any chance it's Shedeur Sanders to the L.A. Rams to learn behind Matthew Stafford?
I mean, that is a perfect spot because I know it's third round. You don't think of starters here, but they don't have Stafford's successor. They're kind of locked in for 2 years with him. He's 37 years old. This is a great spot for him. He's a pocket passer, not a runner. This guy is a pure pocket passer. They need a number 2 quarterback, developmental guy. This is a good spot for him. I mean, and by the way, on my quarterback board, we're really running low on quality backups here. So this is a good spot now. But the only thing is the Rams already gave up their first, so they need to start drafting players.
It is a very different quarterback class that we are seeing here in 2025 than we expected entering either the NFL or college football season, and certainly the 2025 NFL draft. Cap, when we thought about a couple of guys that were favored to go early in the draft, Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck remaining in college, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, all hoping still to hear their names called, Blue.
Yeah, so clearly that quarterback discussion is a big part of every offseason. Aaron Rodgers potentially landing in Pittsburgh. I'll let Ben talk a little bit more about that when we come back. I'll have Kevin Walsh step in right after this on SportsGrid's NFL Draft coverage.
Knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up like 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats, typically in your direction, if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. BEJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
'25 NFL draft coverage right here on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Joe Lisi. We send it back over to Ben Stevens and Adam Kaplan.
We are live right here for the 2025 SportsGrid Draft Special. Cap, the LA Rams have made the pick. It is not a quarterback. It is not Shedeur Sanders. It's another defensive player out of Michigan in Josiah Stewart. The Rams trying to build up that young defensive line that really continued to improve the entirety of the 2024 NFL campaign, and we saw on full display in that playoff run.
Yeah, and Stewart will be a third edge rusher. He'll come off the bench. He'll help them with their rotation. They're very young there. Versus unbelievable as a rookie. Yeah. Way better than probably anyone thought. Certainly well ahead of schedule. So, yeah, this is along the lines of what they need. But bottom line is that they still need that young developmental quarterback. Sanders was there. Nope. Didn't go with it.
Maybe later in round number 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll see what day 3 holds for the LA Rams. When you think about the Rams cap as well, Chris Shula, the new defensive coordinator, of course, had some success. A Rams defense that struggled early. We know they're pretty good on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense really did come along. Josiah Stewart, the 5th Michigan player drafted here, Kev, in the 2025 NFL draft.
And look, Michigan had themselves the incredible season 2 years ago, and I think a lot of that is carried over into some of this year's draft. We also got the Baltimore Ravens pick in, and I want to go to you on this one here, Joe. Emory Jones, offensive tackle out of LSU. A lot of hype around Jones entering this season. I feel many would say he didn't necessarily live up to it.
No, not that good of a run blocker, and got overshadowed by his teammate Will Campbell in terms of the hype, but still has huge upside. He's got a great wingspan. You talk about the weight, around 330 pounds, in terms of the offseason. 6'4", 6'5". Again, in terms of pass blocking, I think he can perform on the next level. I think he's a little bit weak in terms of the rushing attack, and that's where he needs some work and technique. But you talk about the third round, the middle rounds right here. This is a developmental pick that potentially in a year or two could be a starter. So I like the value. I like where they picked him. And again, he has upside, Kev.
And I think the Baltimore Ravens draft class is one that many would applaud, with Malachi Starks and Mike Green coming before Emory Jones here in round number 3. Of course, the questions around Mike Green caused that slide. Baltimore clearly feeling comfortable enough to take that chance in round number 2. I know the crew here, I'm sure, already talked a ton about the Shedeur Sanders slide. I just want to throw my 2 cents on the table. If you would have told me Pittsburgh passed on Sanders in round number 1, well, I think it would have been disappointing. I would have been surprising. We're just gonna have to pause that.
Contain yourself. You okay? Are you okay?
Well, the Sam Darnold debate's not going anywhere. Wow. The pick is in, and the Seattle Seahawks in round number 3 get perhaps the steal of the draft. Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, the best deep ball passer in this class, the best athlete flatly in this class, regardless of position. I would have taken a chance on an athlete of this level in round number 1. People will say, whoa, that's wild. It's not. They did it with Anthony Richardson. You could say that hasn't worked out. He's only started about 1 game, if I can count him correctly, in Indianapolis. Jalen Milroe, way more success at Alabama than Anthony Richardson during his time at Florida. A unique prospect, in the reality, I still believe, Joe, when a prospect like money-making Milroe comes around, the league at times doesn't know what to do. Seattle did, stepped up to the podium, and made a great pick.
Yeah, well, listen, 3rd round, you can't argue taking Jalen Milroe. Physical specimen, a weight room type of guy, just like Jalen Hurts was in terms of his days in Tuscaloosa, and one of the dominant running quarterbacks that we've seen. Takes games over with his legs, did it in the biggest games possible throughout the last couple of seasons for Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. When you give an opportunity and a seam to Jalen Milroe, he takes it to the house almost every time. So in terms of that RPO game, he brings an added dimension that Seattle doesn't have with Sam Darnold. He is a little bit inconsistent reading coverage and forcing sometimes throws into double coverage and triple coverage, which leads to turnovers. He's going to need to work on that. But sitting behind Sam Darnold that potentially utilized in, let's say, red zone opportunities, RPO type of looks, he can have the same success on the ground as Jaden Daniels. Being that pocket passer, that's where he needs to work on.
Well, I said it. But no, and that's great, but I think we can also count on progression. I mean, Jaden Daniels fixed one of his huge issues at LSU. Couldn't win a single important game. I mean, not a single one of them on his resume, while at Baton Rouge, it felt like, at least during the Heisman campaign, for sure. Won multiple playoff games this year. Anything really is possible.
Knocked off the number 1 seed, Detroit Lions.
That's what I'm saying. He finally did it, right? The whole Heisman campaign, it's Army, it's Georgia State, right? It's running the score up on Florida, extend, right? But Alabama, Jalen Milroe beats Jaden Daniels, and I think those type of gutty victories that we saw, you know, many, many moons ago, I used to talk about a gutty performance in Lawrence, Kansas. And that was one where we could tell Caleb Williams had some real juice. I think I was first on the scene. A gutty performance in Baton Rouge, anybody could agree. It's what Jalen Milroe offered not once, but twice. Honestly, if you put the security camera footage up right now, he might still be running for a touchdown over there in Death Valley. Ben, you know what I think of the pick. How about you?
I miss you guys over there. That is for sure. But, Cap, in the 3rd round, the Seattle Seahawks decide to draft Jalen Milroe. The 4th quarterback in this 2025 draft class is now off the board. What led to Seattle's decision to make this selection?
Yeah, and look, this is a different type of quarterback. Sam Howell, by the way, could run. Okay, now he's on the final of his rookie deal, so this is where this comes in, that he could replace Howell as the number 2 quarterback. But, man, Milroe, I saw him at the Senior Bowl. Arm strength is enormous. Flat-out run. He's unbelievable with the ball in his hands, but he's got major accuracy issues. That is why he's a 3rd-round pick, not a late first or early.
Completion percentage dropping from the 2023 season to 2024, but 20 rushing touchdowns a season ago in Tuscaloosa, Kev.
Again, I do find it fascinating that Anthony Richardson wowed people enough to go in the top 5. Jalen Milroe just worth a round 3 pick. At the end of the day, though, Seattle has the opportunity to even prove themselves wrong by letting Milroe last this long. Yes, this also means that Shedeur Sanders still being passed up. We'll talk about it next here on SportsGrid.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve to be first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. BEJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
No.
So small.
All right, we're live with you right here on SportsGrid. And folks, here's the deal. Our production crew has been on it for 2 straight days. They just told me something that I have to see to believe. I'm not doubting them. They are they are on top of it. But it's real. Okay. At pick 94 in round number 3, the Cleveland Browns select quarterback Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon.
Wow.
With, again, respect to Gabriel, he is not the story in this moment. It's that Shedeur Sanders was just passed up on for Dillon Gabriel. Cam Ward, everyone expected it. Jackson Dart at the end, booked in front of Shedeur Sanders to be QB2 in this class. Entering into today, the Tyler Shuck love was real and it played out. Milroe versus Sanders, maybe. We wouldn't expect it. It happened. Not one person could possibly tell you they thought Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon would come off of the board before Shedeur Sanders. I want to get Lisi's thoughts on Gabriel in a moment, but Ben, I go to you on just this idea that Shedeur Sanders was passed up on for Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah, Kev, it is absolutely astounding. You see the numbers there on Dillon Gabriel. Nearly a 73% completion percentage, throwing for nearly 4,000 yards last year in Eugene, 30 touchdowns to 6 INTs. We know how talented, Cap, the Oregon Ducks are offensively. Outstanding numbers for Dillon Gabriel. But nobody thought he would go on night number 2. Certainly nobody had Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders in terms of who goes first in the 2025 NFL draft. And Cap, as we look at your top quarterbacks here in this draft class, Dillon Gabriel is nowhere to be found on this top 8. So how surprising of a selection is this?
Chuck, I was at the Senior Bowl. He's really small. Okay, I know his college numbers are great. He's a tiny guy. If you thought Russell Wilson, another Senior Bowl guy, 2012, was small at 5'10", this guy, small frame. I know he's a good athlete. Projects to be a decent number 2 quarterback. I don't believe in taking pure backups round 3. I just don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. Cleveland, I don't quite understand what they're doing here. Because honestly, Quinn Ewers projects better. Will Howard, maybe a little bit. But again, with Shedeur Sanders, the league is telling us something. Look, we're all wrong. Clearly, the league, Ben, when a guy like this put up massive college numbers suddenly, and coach any player, they're telling you they don't think he's good enough. Sorry. That's it.
The second ever quarterback in Division I history, FBS or FCS, to throw for more than 14,000 career passing yards while maintaining a 70% completion percentage. That was Shedeur Sanders at both Jackson State and Colorado. Again, Kev, this is an absolute stunner, especially made by the Cleveland Browns, who at different points throughout this second night were favored to draft both Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe. They end up with Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon.
I want to talk about what Kaplan said there around Sanders, but before we do that, Gabriel was just selected by Cleveland. Maybe we'll do it at the top of the hour here. Joe, your thoughts on Dylan Gabriel being picked by the Cleveland Browns?
Kid's a winner. I'll give him that. You know, elevated UCF, then transferred to Oklahoma, won big games against Texas, and then obviously took his team to an undefeated regular season, but struggled in the college football semifinal playoff loss to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Looked like a deer in the headlights against a more dominant physical defensive line that got after it with all the chips in the middle of the table. So you look at that last performance and you say he's just a pure backup. But again, in the right scheme, could he be like a Drew Brees type of player? It's possible, Kev, but that's the outlier. He's just a legitimate backup. I compare him a little bit to Sam Howell in terms of just agility and just, skill set. Sam Howell was a starter for 1 year and then now is relegated to a backup. But I don't expect Dylan Gabriel to challenge for the starting job with the Cleveland Browns. Might be on another team before the end of the regular season as well.
I think that Dylan Gabriel is the kind of guy that goes in this range, right? Of, hey, it's late, we're rounding out the QB room. That's really all we're trying to do here.
Well, they did it with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, too, right?
Here's my thing. Even if you remove Sanders, give me Will Howard, give me Kyle McCord, give me Riley Leonard, all in front of Dylan Gabriel. So that is stunning.
He's
what
5'11".
is the NFL telling us around Shedeur Sanders? We'll talk about that next right here.
Knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve to be first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today, only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. The EJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And $40 million.
Live with you right here on SportsGrid. It is our 2025 NFL Draft coverage. Kevin Walsh with Joe Lisi, Ben Stevens, Adam Kaplan, Mike Blewett, all here with you tonight for round number 2 and round number 3 of this draft. A night where we knew Shedeur Sanders would be a part of the conversation, but we didn't think that Shedeur Sanders was going to be an all-night thing. Should likely come off of the board round 2. In fact, he actually started today, April 25th, this Friday, as the favorite to be the first pick in round number 2. That didn't happen, but by the time the market closed, we knew that. Vegas was the team mostly linked to Shedeur Sanders. The Raiders kept trading back, and we said, okay, I guess it is going to be round number 3. Up come the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers passing on Shedeur Sanders was maybe the single most surprising thing that has happened in this draft at round number 3. And then Jalen Milroe went off the board. Okay, again, we could see it. Dylan Gabriel to Cleveland is a stunner. And as we were talking about this, Cap mentioned, and Cap, I'll certainly throw it back your way, that the NFL is just telling us Shedeur Sanders is not that good. I disagree. I think, sure, the NFL is telling us Shedeur Sanders isn't a top 5 player, around 1 player in this class. But the NFL still, I think, has a ways to go with certain things, as a lot of leagues do, but certainly the NFL. And Shedeur Sanders is richer than some of the coaches that were interviewing him. And this is still a league that I think probably doesn't like that. And it's why anonymous scouts and executives are telling us just how terrible he is. You can doubt whether or not the personal stuff is causing this Sanders slide. Again, the film dropping him out of round 1, 2, got it. The film is not worse than Dylan Gabriel's. That is an outrageous suggestion that nobody would agree with. I now think this level of slide, and I'll throw it to you, Ben, is associated with character stuff that I flatly disagree with, and I actually think is indefensible from the National Football League.
Kev, this is absolutely stunning. It is a slide we have rarely, if ever, seen in the history of the NFL draft. And Cap, you said it. Shedeur Sanders not being drafted so far in the first 3 rounds here in 2025 is the National Football League telling us something. We talked about the talent he possesses. We talked about the numbers that he put up, both with Jackson State and Colorado. I think Kevin summed it up perfectly. The tape can make him not a top 5, top 10, or even first-round pick. But this late on night number 2, so Cap, tell us, what is the NFL telling us about Shedeur Sanders?
They don't see him as a starter. So I was talking to Greg Cosell from NFL Films, who's phenomenal, right? You matchup show on ESPN where he's analyst. Greg said, and he told me this back, I'm going to say late January, early February. He's done all his quarterback study. He said, I got to tell you, how the Shucks tape is better than Shedeur Sanders. He goes, I don't know who you've talked to, but let me know who you've talked to see how they see it. Well, guess what? The league has spoken. Chuck was my number 4 quarterback. Okay, Shedeur, my number 2. Look who went higher. And Shedeur's still on the board. The league is telling you, Ben, they don't think he's a starting quarterback.
So I think it's a good point, Cap, right? You mentioned that Tyler Shuck and Jackson Dart go ahead of Shedeur Sanders, but a guy that wasn't even listed here in Dylan Gabriel drafted before Sanders as well. So to the notion that the persona, the bravado, who his father is, and all of the notoriety and attention that comes with that is keeping Shedeur Sanders from being picked, is there credence to it?
I don't believe it. Honestly, I'm going to disagree with my friend Kevin here. I'm going to tell you why. Tape is 75% of a grade, right? Craig Mish and I were talking about this on News. This is a quarterback-starved league. You can't tell me that this young man can't go in the 3rd round? Really? Is his tape that bad? Apparently it is. Tape is always the number 1 criteria. Character is important, absolutely, because he's got to be the leader of your football team.
Right.
But the tape is very ordinary. That's it. And I look, and the number, by the way, the numbers, his numbers, you read them? Phenomenal. Son of a Hall of Fame player and a really good college coach. So you're going to say the bravado, what's dropped him out of the 3rd round? I don't buy that.
Yeah, but it's got to be something because all of this
tape isn't good enough, Ben.
Is
Come over, Kevin. Oh.
The tape, again, the tape dropping him outside of the top 5 quarterbacks off of the board, outside of the top 2 rounds, I absolutely get it. We know that off-field things drop guys all the time. Mike Green had top 10 tape. You told us as much. Off-field stuff drops him. James Pierce had top 10 tape. Off-field stuff drops him. That happens all the time. I think what is happening, though, is it is unimaginable that Shedeur Sanders' off-field stuff is what's causing this drop. But that is the only explanation for this level of drop because, Cap, you entered this draft process telling us he was the second-best quarterback on the board. So ultimately, you don't agree with the NFL's perception. This is now a scenario where Shedeur Sanders' gravitas, right, to try and encompass it all, is rubbing people the wrong way so much that around 2 or 3 talent might not go until round 5 or 6.
There's something, Kevin, okay, I'll address your point now. That's fair. For a guy that is so accomplished, how could he possibly not even be seen as a starter? I mean, the third round is your lowest starting round. Okay, that's the way it works. Mm-hmm. Third round, low-end starter, Ben, high-end backup. Fourth round, high-end backup. Now, yes, Tom Brady. Listen, the league makes mistakes all the time, okay? Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. He shouldn't have been. His situation, he was a guy that Lloyd Carr would rotate. Seems ridiculous at Michigan. And the league makes mistakes all the time at quarterback. Kevin was actually that about half an hour ago. I would agree with that. Bottom line is the league is probably going to wind up being wrong here if he goes to the right situation. The Rams, okay? The Rams would be a great spot where he doesn't have to play. Figure it out with him. But I talked about this since January with Pharrell on Coast to Coast. I said this is not a good year, Scott. You need a quarterback. And we talked about Shedeur's, big numbers, Cam Ward, obviously Jackson Darter. I told him after I got by the Senior Bowl, this guy's going to go way harder than you think. Milroe, I did not like what I saw from Milroe. I get it. There are gifts there. He needs time. But it just stuns me that the league is basically saying he's not good enough. Hard to believe, Shedeur.
And you really have to wonder where those potential landing spots are as of this moment if we have seen him be skipped on so many times here throughout the 2025 NFL Draft. And I do think it is important to say, Kev, all those off-the-field issues are not true legal issues or assault allegations or anything of the such. If it's his personality, confidence, or bravado, very different than some of the other off-the-field character concerns that other NFL draft prospects see their stock take a hit for.
Yeah, and I think the reality is now with back-to-back Raider picks, again, I will say, although I guess how much more can I be stunned, if this is not Shedeur Sanders, the Raiders entered tonight minus 220 to draft Shedeur Sanders. They pick at 98 and 99. They begin at pick 98 with Caleb Rogers, an offensive tackle out of Texas Tech. If you are the Raiders and you are even remotely considering Shedeur Sanders, Joe, you would imagine this has to be the pick right here at 99.
Yeah, again, it makes sense in the sense of if they're looking for a backup for 1 or 2 years and see if he could turn into a starter behind Geno Smith, why not take him right now?
Well, the pick is in, and it's Charles Grant, an offensive tackle out of William and Mary. So we entered today hearing from a number of places that the Vegas Raiders had interest in Shedeur Sanders. That was flatly wrong. They don't actually have interest in him, or they leaked that they had interest in a 7th-round guy. A lot of this not starting to add up to me. We'll be back with you here on SportsGrid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? because of parody. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside.
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
First time on a casino floor and feeling a little overwhelmed? Well, here's a tip. Lots of machines have a free demo mode you can try for practice. So give those slots a spin in practice mode before you start putting down some real cash. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You cannot shoot 2 of 17 from 3 and think you're beating Steph and Jimmy Buckets, a.k.a. Playoff Jimmy, Playoff him, Himmy, whatever you want to call him. You can't shoot that bad and compete in the playoffs versus the Warriors. SGA wasn't even that good. You want to talk about non-competitive series? People want to talk about getting rid of play-in. Maybe we need to...
Back with you right here on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Joe Lisi. You'll hear from Mike Blewett in just a couple of moments. Ben Stevens and Adam Kaplan. Talking a lot about Shedeur Sanders. I've said my piece. Cap has said his. I think we respect both point of views. Ben obviously adding in his thoughts. Joe, I really want to hear from you. I actually really didn't think the Sanders fall was going to be the story of the draft. It now is. What do you make of the fact that Shedeur Sanders seemingly will not be selected through 3 rounds of the NFL draft?
To me, it's shocking. Again, I didn't think it was an elite quarterback class, but I thought it was Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and everybody else. Obviously, the NFL picked. They decided that there were other quarterbacks better than Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck, and obviously Jackson Dart, on the first round. But again, that doesn't mean the story's written and ended.
Mm-hmm.
Shedeur Sanders has the intangibles, I believe, to be an NFL starting quarterback, to be an elite starting quarterback, we'll see. But I like the confidence. I like the ability to step up and play behind a weak offensive line. What are you going to get when you play in the NFL? You talk about the quarterbacks for the New York Giants and Jets respectively. Jackson Dart needs the mentality to provide and play in New York. I'm not so sure he can do that. He might be Zach Wilson 2.0 before Shedeur Sanders gets picked. I really believe that. But Shedeur Sanders, to me, elevated a program that had 1 win with Carl Durrell. He took it to 4 wins. They started the season 3-0. He took that team in terms of his second season to a 9-4 overall record. They competed for potentially a Big 12 title, took them to a bowl appearance against BYU. And the short to intermediate throws, the bubble screens, every college quarterback does that. Dylan Gabriel threw a ton in terms of Oregon. I mean, Bo Nix, that was his knock coming out of the draft last year, right? 81%, they were bubbled screens. We make the storyline compared to how we want to, knock or elevate the player. That's the bottom line is Shedeur Sanders could play in the league. The fact that he played with Travis Hunter is absolutely ridiculous. I'll go through it again. Tua played with Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and he was selected by the Miami Dolphins. Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, right? Nobody cared about that. Jaden Daniels. 2 number 1s, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Nobody's knocking the fact that he played with them, right? I mean, why are we knocking the fact that he threw the ball to Travis Hunter? Travis Hunter is a great football player, deserving of the Heisman, but Shedeur Sanders is clearly, in my opinion, second best quarterback in the draft class, best pure pocket passer, you could say, with Cam Ward. Jackson Dart, in my opinion, needs a clean pocket. Shedeur Sanders showcased with a weak offensive line, he could put up numbers, and that's the bottom line.
It's again, it's a really surprising thing. I do wonder if there is this idea that bringing in someone of the star power of Shedeur Sanders could be worrisome if you are not going to give him a chance to be your starting quarterback. But I also just think if you are an organization, you have to trust your standing that won't be the case. I also just, again, like the Browns had Dylan Gabriel higher on their board than Shedeur Sanders is just something I am really, really struggling to wrap my head around. Savion Jones, edge rusher out of LSU, goes to the Denver Broncos, who did trade back up in with the Philadelphia Eagles. We have one pick to go, which means we have a lot of names I still think to watch for tomorrow, Ben and Cap. Any of the guys, again, unless they potentially go at 102 to Minnesota, that you'll be keeping your eye on?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Kev. Outside of Shedeur Sanders, some other quarterbacks that we have listed here. Quinn Ewers, Will Howard for the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, and Kyle McCord, who set an ACC record in terms of the most passing yards by an ACC QB in a single season. And, Cap, it's really interesting because you talked about how late in round 3, really your final chance, at least at the QB spot, to kind of be considered a potential starter at some time of your National Football League career. If you're taken on day 3, you could be that reserve piece to learn, to grow in an organization. Could be the same story for Shedeur Sanders as we look at these quarterback prospects here. Where do you think are a couple of likely landing spots around the NFL in day 3?
Oh, boy. For Shedeur, before we move on, because I got a name for you who I cannot believe is not off the board yet at running back position. Probably know where I'll go there, but anywhere where it's unsettled for the future at the number 2 quarterback position. Cooper Rush just went to Baltimore, the limited quarterback. Funny, I was going to say Cleveland, but no, they have too many guys there. Dylan Gabriel, of course, we just mentioned him. I think Detroit for the future at backup quarterback is one to look at, but how's Cam Sketabo, the running back from Arizona State, not off the board? How is that possible? All this production? No, I know some teams told me they actually liked him as an athletic fullback. Your fullback, 4th or 5th round, but still, I thought Sketabo would be gone by now.
Yeah, absolutely so. And I do think it's an interesting point, Cap, that you bring up. We've mentioned the names and the teams that were probably most likely, at least based on the odds expectation, to be those landing spots for Shedeur Sanders, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, the Las Vegas Raiders. Entering day number 3, Kev, it kind of opens up the table of many opportunities. And to Cap's point about Cam Sketabo, we thought he could go here on night number 2. We thought the Denver Broncos would potentially be in the running. He is an absolute playmaker with all that he can do with the football. He will certainly be a name to pay attention to tomorrow on Saturday.
Wait until tomorrow. Ty Felton closes out day number 2 of the NFL draft, a wide receiver from Maryland. A lot of interesting picks that we discussed today. Early, at this point, you've been talking all night. You kind of forget. Yeah, we had round number 2. We had some stars that went off. Donovan Ezaraku to Dallas, right? The Mason Taylor pick to the New York Jets. All certainly really good selections there. I'm fascinated to see the Trevion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson split in New England. I'm sure Drake May and Mike Vrabel are optimistic about what that partnership could be heading into Drake May's rookie season. But for me, as far as biggest takeaways from today, it is Jalen Milroe landing in Seattle. A no-pressure situation, does not need to or expected to play in year number 1, but someone in front of him who absolutely could eventually give that spot up. You'll hear from Mike Blewett as we wrap up our 2025 NFL Draft coverage next on SportsGrid.
knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shedeur Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve to be first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. The EJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And we are back on the grid to close out our coverage of the 2025 NFL Draft on day 2 of the NFL Draft. And we get our final thoughts here. Thank you to Kevin Walsh and the entire production crew, from Greg Sussman to Joe Frieso to Chris Kofsky and all the way down the list. Throw it over to guys at the wall, Ben and Adam, for your final thoughts on day 2.
Of course, Cap, a lot of storylines to digest. We have done that here throughout the entirety of night number 2. Still 4 more rounds to go. Rounds 4 through 7 coming your way Saturday afternoon in the shadows of Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We've had 2 nights, 3 rounds in total. Cap, when you look at a couple of NFL organizations who you think have had a stellar draft in totality, who do you highlight?
Well, listen, Andrew Berry, I've been critical of the Watson trade, which is worse in NFL history in terms of acquisitions, but he got tremendous value on that trade he made in the first round. Yes, he passed a potential generational player. Not a quarterback in Travis Hunter, but has Jacksonville's first-round pick next, which could be top 5, okay? So I like what Andrew did there, no question about it. I thought Philly handled themselves well. They were very patient. They got a big-time linebacker, edge rusher in the first round. I thought they did a good job. Actually, if you and I were grading, handing out grades, I'm putting Washington what they did. They got a right tackle, which is absolutely huge. They got I just like everything that Washington has done this offseason. They've had one of the strongest offseasons of any team. Adam Peters, your GM, doing a great job.
2 years in, and the Commanders are looking very, very positive. Blue, there will be so much to follow on day number 3. Some very familiar names from college football past, now trying to join the National Football League, but none more so, of course, than Shedeur Sanders. He will have to wait until at least round 4 to hear his name called in the 2025 NFL Draft.
Yeah, great stuff, guys. Obviously, Joe, some best players available beyond Shedeur Sanders. We still have Cam Scatabo, Gunnar Helm, Dylan Sampson, players still out there. Josh Farmer from Florida State, the defensive tackle. So still some impact players out there, but the league usually tells you a story. After round 3, they are not banking on these players necessarily being impact starters right away.
No, but the one position I can say in terms of the late rounds, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th is running back. We've seen plug-and-play type of guys, and you mentioned Dylan Sampson and Cam Scatabo, productive players that I think will definitely match up and be picked in the rounds 4 through 7. but some others. Damian Martinez, the transfer from Oregon State to Miami, very physical inside rusher. You got Trevor Etienne, that transfer from Florida to Georgia. Again, the pedigree, potential bruiser between the tackles. Taj Brooks, my guy coming out of Texas Tech, can catch the football out of the backfield, yards after contact. I think a lot of running backs can make clubs and potentially be starters or at least third down backs in this league. So we'll see what transpires. I'll just say this, in terms of day 2, round 2 and 3, Cleveland killed it, in my opinion. I really believe it. And that, take Dylan Gabriel out of the equation. They get the linebacker from UCLA, Quinshon Judkins, home run hitter, potentially Nick Chubb type. You get Fannin from Bowling Green, big play wide receiver, active to go with Njoku. They now have an offensive identity again. As long as they can protect Flacco, I think they're back. I really do. I think Cleveland could be a potential 9-win football team this year as long as the defense steps up. And I love what Houston did in terms of the wide receivers.
I'm with you on Houston. I think you have to give the Cowboys credit for these first couple of nights. Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezeraku, Savon Ravel out of East Carolina. Certainly 3 players that had very high grades athletically and had at some points first-round grades, right? Ravel obviously coming off of the ACL injury. We like what Denver has done in these first couple of nights with R.J. Harvey and Pat Bryant going off the board to them tonight. Lots of grades to go around, which are mostly irrelevant, but I think you have to really grade the teams on the way they're operating within the draft. Are they reaching for players? Are they getting players of need? I think that's really what we focus on. So we appreciate everybody watching and listening to us over these last couple of nights. On behalf of my entire crew here, I mentioned the production crew earlier, but for Ben Stevens and Adam Kaplan and Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi, we've had a great time. Joe, this I believe is our 8th consecutive draft doing this together. It's good to sit by your side as always, get your takes on college players. We try to have as much fun as possible, even though we're in a rotation tonight. We got some different voices in on different things. My Pittsburgh Steelers, they did not value the quarterback position yet in this draft. I think you're going to be looking at Aaron Rodgers showing up in Pittsburgh pretty soon, so they have at least a short-term plan. But for me personally, it's been a rough couple of weeks, but this was a perfect place to land and get started again on the grid with some of my great friends here, and hopefully you had a lot of fun betting the markets with us, following what these teams can do. Wait till we get to the win totals in the next couple of weeks. On behalf of the entire crew here, thanks for watching the 2025 NFL Draft coverage.